So today's really the first time in 3 weeks we're back on the subject we've been learning. Now, some of that subject from 3 weeks ago, I told you in a sort of overview narrative style, citing to different midrashim commentaries. And today we're going to start off learning in the text of those midrashim, and then going forward to new text. Again, thanks for being with us. We're in Second Shmuel, Second Samuel, Shmuel Bet, chapter 7, and God willing, we'll be going into chapter 8. Here we go. We're going to start. I'm going to have like a 2-minute sort of a trailer that I was sent of the movie we saw the other day, a week ago, just like a two-minute refresher, and then we'll be going forward.
ריבונו של עולם, אני עבדך הנאמן.
Sort of behind the scenes. I always find it very interesting to see what goes on in the behind the scenes when you hear a soundtrack in a movie or something, and to see that it's not just the sound. I mean, there's like 20, sometimes 20, 30 people in the background playing that soundtrack, and it's interesting. Okay, let's get to text now. We left off in Shmuel, chapter 7, Parak Sheva, Shvi. God, just a refresher, and then let's look in the text. God had conveyed that the Beit HaMikdash is going to be built, that God has been so long without a house. The nation has been wandering for centuries, and God has been with them without a house. And the time finally has come for a house. And David was so excited, he's going to be building the Beit HaMikdash. And he got the kind of confirmation from the prophet Nathan. That night, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, races, so to speak, to prophesy to Natan. No, David is not going to build it. His son will build it. You've got to go to him first thing tomorrow. Tell him he's not building it. His son will build it. The son is not yet born. It is one of the son. He doesn't have yet the son. The son will be born, will build a Beit HaMikdash. I will be like a father to the boy. The boy will be like a special son to me. And you better tell him quickly before David takes some oath or vow that he's not going to eat or drink till he builds the Beit HaMikdash. And Natan tells David. And then we talked about how you might react if it were you. Upon learning here, you thought you're going to be the one to build the Beit HaMikdash. And then suddenly you find out, no, it'll be your son, not you. And we learned how David responds. If there was disappointment, we didn't encounter it. He responds with excitement and joy that he will have another son who will be so great and so holy that God will make of that boy a special son to God who will build the Beit HaMikdash. And he glorifies in that and stops and says, essentially, if I can't build the Beit HaMikdash, that's been taken off the table, I'll start preparing all the materials for my son to build the Beit HaMikdash. He's going to need gold and silver and brass. He's going to need wood and stones. He's going to need professional people who can carve wood and who can stone cutters. And I'm going to basically prepare for him, so to speak, a Beit HaMikdash in a box. You know, you order these things in a box, just add water, and you've got a Beit HaMikdash. And so I'm going to do everything so that in my lifetime, instead of just walking away from a dream, I'm going to be part of that dream. And now let's go to, I've told you this, we learned it in the text, we've talked about it. Today we're going to finish up looking at the commentators, how they say it, and then we're going to move forward. As always, thanks so much for being here. And here we go. All right. So we start with the Malbim. And Malbim says essentially that God was saying, I have not been in my own home all this time. I've just been wandering in a tent here, in a tabernacle there. An ohel, a tent, a mishkan, a portable temple that was built in the desert and taken. And Malbim reminds us that the mishkan had been carried, it's portable, and from the desert that was brought into Eretz Yisrael with the time of Yoshua, from one place, then the Jews moved its center to another place, the Yemetalech Ba'oel Mishkan, and so I had to keep going from one tent to a tabernacle, Ratzalomar. Malbim says that God is essentially saying, Ba'ohel Bamidbar, first I was in the tent in the desert, Uva Mishkan Bimei Shiloh, then I was, when you set up the tabernacle in the new land of Israel, in the city, the town of Shiloh, and that's, of course, the Mishkan at which Hannah was crying. At the Haftarah, we read at Rosh Hashanah, begging God for a child and everything. It was in Shiloh. That's where Eli the Kohen and his sons Chafni and Pinchas served. And then it moved to Nov, and that was the city of the priests, the Kohanim. Unfortunately, that's where King Saul massacred the Kohanim. The Givon, and then the Mishkan was moved a third time. Kilo hayamenucha arata with Nayim. There just was never a time that God had a home at one place. And again, you can't compare individual human beings with God's experience. It's not the same. The whole world belongs to God. He lives everywhere at this, but a little bit. I've read about. I was like your basic Brooklyn Jew with a hardworking, lower middle class father, worked hard every day, mother who was a housekeeper, homekeeper. And so many of us grew up in a world like that. And we tended to live in one place, maybe two. But I've seen in the movies, and I've met one or two people who grew up, let's say, in military families. And they remember that every 6 months they were moving, that dad got called to be in this fort, and then fort this, and then fort that, then for a stint overseas in this country, then to that country, then back to this fort. And they constantly were moving. And when you talk to people like that, they start off by saying how much fun it was and how interesting to live somewhere. And then they finally break down and they tell you they wish to God they had known what it was like to just live in one place and have some stability in their lives. And it is what it is. God, so to speak, kiviyachol, as though the Kadosh Baruch Hu did not have, as though he did not have stability. He couldn't just be in one place where he could sort of hang the pictures on the wall, set up the room and the rugs and the carpeting and the furniture, and that's it. And you don't have to keep calling a moving van every couple of months or even a couple of years to have a place. And this is a big, big thing. And that's what ultimately the Beit HaMikdash is, that is the place. And by the way, that's why the Beit HaMikdash does not later get rebuilt in Berlin as the Jews are moving to London, to France, to Borough Park. The Beit HaMikdash does not get moved there. God has one location where he lives. And if the house currently is under reconstruction, temporary construction, so be it. But he's finished moving. No more Shiloh, no Givon, only one address. No more changes of address. And so we continue. So that was the Malbim. Now we continue with the Malbim, that he talks about how God had rapidly come to the prophet Natan and said, quick, I'm coming in the middle of the night. No time to waste. Go to David and stop him before he starts building. Ulam Hashem, hey with a slash, you know, it's Hashem, God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem miher lahodia lahachozeh. God hastened, rushed to inform the prophet, the seer, ki lo yaskim lozeh, that he, God, does not agree with what the prophet Natan had just said. V'chachmeinu zichronan levracha, and our great sages of biblical and Talmudic times, be'aru shalachen hodio techef. That's the reason that God immediately hastened to Natan to tell him, Bal yatchil David b'ma'asehu, before David suddenly begins al yedei neder, or al yedei shiyaskor pa'alim. Before David starts making a vow. Once you make a vow, you can't get out of the vow. What's he going to do? He's going to make a vow that I'm not going to do X, Y, Z until the building is started. And he doesn't know the building's not going to get started for another number of decades, let's say. But before he starts signing agreements and contracts with workers and laborers and starts importing goods, it's not going to happen. At least not immediately. He's got to know that. And indeed, he made a vow of a different kind. It was his nature to make vows that he fulfilled to God. You're not allowed to take God's name in vain. You're not allowed to make a vow falsely or unnecessarily. If you're called in a court case, you're going to give a deposition, you're going to testify in trial, and they say, you know, from the movies, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you? A Jew is not allowed to answer that way. Cannot say this thing about helping God, because you can't vow in God's name, even though you're going to tell the truth, unless you have no choice. So if you're living in the Middle Ages in Catholic Europe, where if you don't take the vow, they'll kill you. And even the vow was the More Judaico. You should look it up. We don't have time for it now. More, M-O-R-E, Judaico. Judaico, more Judaical. Unbelievable what they did to us. You've heard about the Inquisition, the pogroms, the Crusades, the blood libels, the Black Death. There was no end to what they did to us. They wrote a specific oath or vow that Jewish witnesses had to take before testifying in court throughout Catholic Europe. It was a specific Jewish vow. And it was not just you solemnly swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth to help you. It was stuff like, do you swear that you're ready to burn in the deepest hell at the highest fire and with your family and your children, and that you'll never be, and you'll be parched and your eyes will be burnt, and just go on for like 10 minutes, pages. And a Jew would have to say, I do so swear. If you were in the Middle Ages and you were stuck in that world, or the Muslim world, so you pray, so you vowed. What are you going to do? You have to vow. It's not a vow in vain. It's not taking God's name in vain. It's got to be done. But let's say you're in the United States. You don't have to take God's name. They actually don't require it. If you want to, you can. It's like paper or plastic. Which do you want? And you can say, do you solemnly swear do you solemnly affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? End of story. No, so help you, no swear. And I've been in situations where I've been asked to testify, and they start off, do you solemnly swear to? I'll stop them. Not in an arrogant, I'll say, I solemnly affirm. And they stop right away. Oh, okay, he wants plastic. And that's the end of the story. So if David HaMelech would make a vow that I'm going to do X, Y, you can't say, oops, I didn't realize I made the vow under, it was a misunderstanding. You got a real problem. You made a vow to God in God's name. Now you need Hataras Nadarim. Hatarat Nadarim, which goes on like the day before Rosh Hashanah or other times. Someone makes a vow invoking God's name. They got to get out of it. It's not so easy. You need to seek 3 men as a Beit Din. They don't have to be rabbis or judges, but they have to three Jewish men who keep Shabbat and kosher. And they sit down and you stand and you read like 3 pages out of the Siddur prayer book. And they have to recite in certain things. And it takes about 10, 15 minutes. If you ever done it like at Shacharit, the morning davening, the day, Erev Rosh Hashanah, it should be done other times too, if you, God forbid, in that situation. But at the very least, just as on Yom Kippur, we begin with Kol Nidre to try to get absolved for inadvertent vows, in the same way, Hatarat Nadarim. I remember I started my first shul in California, 1987. So I arrive in Woodland Hills in the valley. And so I'm working there 2-3 days. And we get a phone call from a woman. are you the new rabbi? I'm the new rabbi. I need to see you. Very important. I said, okay. She comes to the shul. She said, I need you to absolve a vow. I had been a rabbi by then, 1987. I'd been a rabbi like 6 years. I never heard nobody ever came to me to absolve a vow. It's not that people shouldn't, I guess. Nobody ever came to me with that. And her story was that she had a big fight with her daughter and said something to the daughter like that she swears to God that she will never drive, that if her daughter is going to Israel, she will never drive her to the airport. Right, then she calms down a day later. The daughter's packed. Tomorrow she's going to LAX, and she wants a driver. But she's like a nice Sephardic woman from Edot HaMizrach, the Jews from Arab lands, North African countries. There's a deeper religiosity I'm almost jealous of compared to Ashkenazic religiosity. Don't take me wrong. There's wonderful religiosity in the yeshiva, rabbinic, religious world of Ashkenazim, but there's a whole another level among Sephardim from Edot HaMizrach. The respect they give their rabbis, it's just a whole different, it really is. And you know it right away. If you're a rabbi, it blows you away. You go to an Ashkenazic shul, a shul like the young Israel of Orange County. It's my dream shul. But I've been at shuls where it was like I was like the president of Malaysia or whoever that country where she had to run out of the country. Where you have these boards of directors and then you go into a Sephardic shul and they say, ladies and gentlemen, here's our guest speaker, Rabbi Fischer. And as you're walking in, they kiss you by the hand. They kiss you on the hand. Everybody treats a Rav like with respect. It's an unbelievable thing. Anyway, so this woman comes, she's Sephardic from North African descent, and she's really taking it. She made a vow, and she invoked God's name. She's never going to bring the kid to the airport. Kid's going tomorrow. She wants to bring it to the airport. And she knows she will not dare go to the airport unless she has a rabbi to, and I had to dig up 2 guys to come to shul, and we had to do the whole thing, and we did it. I remember I was saying to Ellen Zichron, I never experienced that. Wouldn't you know it? 4 months later, she's on the phone here. Never came to shul. Had nothing to do with the shul. Was not a member. But I was the only Orthodox rabbi in Woodland Hills. And you call Reform Rabbi, I need a Hataras Nadarim. Guy says, I'll be glad to do it. Just what does that mean? So anyway, she ends up coming to me. What happened? And you have to be respectful. You don't want to intimidate a person to feel the rabbi's making fun of me or the rabbi looks down on me that I got into this. You can't let a person, God forbid, feel that way. They have to feel comfortable coming to the rabbi, even if they've, not hit a home run. And she says, here's what happened. I got into a big fight with my husband, and I told him, I'm not going the next day to the hockey game. And I said God's name. I will not go to the hockey game. And he's really a good guy, and it means a lot to him. And it's his birthday, or maybe it's our anniversary. I really should go, but I can't go because I made a vow. So I called the 2 guys. You call them up like, I need you. Rabbi Fischer, same lady as last time, of course. So we had to fix a vow. I told her, please, let's find someone you really hate that doesn't deserve our respect. And from now on, make vows in the name of that person. And I think we agreed on Ehud Barak, former prime minister. Just make your vows in the name of Ehud Barak. And then you don't have to, then you can violate the vows and it doesn't matter and we'll all be happy. So anyway, that's the story. But that was a big thing. So Kadosh Baruch Hu was telling Natan, you have to stop him. Because next thing you know, he's going to make a vow, kacha. So we continue. The Radak, by Hibalaylahu, again on that night. So he's talking about it. And he says, also, let's find, Shema Yomar, lest, L-E-S-T, lest David say in a vow, Eini ochel, ve'eini shoteh, ad she'evneh Beit Hashem. He swears in God's name, he will not eat, he will not drink, till he starts building the house of God. Well, that's not happening for many, many, many years. You've just been through Tisha B'Av. You don't want to do that long term. You're not even looking forward to doing it on Tisha B'Av. Maher, amorlo, lo atav tivna. So God says, quick, go tell him he's not building it. And therefore, we then said, I told you this, but let's look in the text. I think we read it. Divrei Hayamim Aleph, First Chronicles, Paragraph Bet, chapter 22. As you recall, there is historical narrative in Divrei Hayamim Chronicles that parallels and mirrors a lot of what's in Shmuel and Malachim, the books of Samuel and Kings. And we talked in the past why, if they parallel and mirror, why they both exist in the same 24-volume canon of the Tanakh. Why not leave out Divrei Hayamim, those 2 volumes? We've talked about it in the past. And here's that parallel. And I told you it often fills in details that are lacking in the narrative in Shmuel or in Malachim. It fills in fact details, whereas Malachim and Shmuel, primarily, they give you the fact details, but to bring out spiritual lessons. And so parallel, Vayikra l'Shlomo b'no, David HaMelech called his, let's see if, actually, just a second, make sure I got it. Okay, yeah. So he calls in his son. Let's make sure I got the right one again. Just maybe. Well, let's just pull it from here instead to be sure. 2, 4, 5. Let's try that. Just give me another moment. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so he calls in Shlomo, and he tells Shlomo, he says, yeah, it was the same place I pulled to originally. Okay, he's telling Shlomo, here's what God told me. God came, my little boy Shlomo. Vayomer David l'Shlomo, Beni. The reason sometimes you see something parenthetical, something in brackets, parenthetical is the way it's written in the text, in the Holy Scroll itself. And we have certain traditions that certain words are read differently from how they're written. And that's not in the Torah really, except for the Tochacha, where there are 2 words where God imposes a horrible warning on what horrors will befall, God forbid, if the Jews turn away from Hashem. In Parshat Ki Tavo, and at the end of Sefer Vayikra, and there are 2 particular words that are written one way and pronounced another way. Other than that, that doesn't exist in the Torah. But in the Navi, there are a whole bunch of words like that, and there are reasons for that, which we won't go into now. So David said to Shlomo, my son, Ani haya im levavi livnot bayit. It was in my heart. I had my heart set on it to build the house of God, l'shem Hashem Elokai, in the name of the Lord my God. Vayhi alai dvar Hashem limor, and then God came to me with his word. Dam larov shafachta. David, you spilled a lot of blood. Umilchamot gedolot asita, and you made many, many wars. Lo tivneh vayit lishmi, therefore you may not build a house for me. Ki damim rabim shafachta artza lefanai, because you poured and shed so much blood. And again, the learning, we'll get to the Midrashim also, it's not that he was wrong to kill Goliath and the Philistines, but God wanted he who will build the Beit HaMikdash to have hands that never shed blood. For the same reason, the Beit HaMikdash was not allowed to be built with metal tools, metal instruments, because iron, is what they build weapons of war and killing with. The Gemara talks about how did they carve the stones. You've been to the Western Wall, you've seen how they have stones and stones and stones, and then they pile the stone. Is every stone exactly? I mean, the Beit HaMikdash at the Kotel, they're not 1,000,000% sandpaper flat, but they're pretty flat, and that's why they stack them on top and top and top all the way up. And it stood like that for 2,000 years because it's pretty flat, even if it's not sanded smooth. So how do you get natural stone to look like that? It's got to be carved. But what do you carve it with? You're not allowed to use metal, iron, because that was God's instruction, that the Beit HaMikdash may not be made from any metal, any tool that is made of a substance capable of killing people. And the Gemara says that what they did was they found a particular worm. I've taught this somewhere before. A particular worm, W-O-R-M, called the shamir. And the shamir, it's just a little worm, but it's got the strongest teeth in the world. And it cuts through stone. And they would paint or draw the outline of what they wanted cut, and they'd put the shamir worm on it, and it would follow the line, and that's how they cut the stones of the Beit HaMikdash. When Isaac Itzernetsky became prime minister of Israel, when he became the head of the Lehi, the Lochmei Cherut Yisrael, the freedom fighters for Israel, the BBC called them the Stern Gang. When Itzernetsky became their head, as with so many Jews born in the exile, when they made Aliyah, they took on Hebrew names, Hebrew surnames. Golda Meyerson became Golda Meir, Yitzchak Rabinowitz became Yitzchak Rabin, Shimon Persky became Shimon Peres, and so on and so forth. I can just go on and on with those names. And Itzernetsky took on the name Shamir, Yitzchak Shamir. He was a short guy in stature, but he was tough as nails. He could, and the idea, he was the head of the Irgun, of the Lechi, which was even stronger than, in certain ways, than the Irgun. And he was a powerhouse, strong, and he was unbreakable. That's what that was. So continuing. So David is saying, God said, because I shed blood, even though I was supposed to, I won't be allowed to do it. So God kept the conversation saying, a son will be born to you, even though I have sons from those other 6 wives we learned about, and more. Also, Michal, maybe he had a son from her, maybe not. We learned that. Huya ish menucha. He will be, right, at Shabbat menucha. He will be a fellow of peace. He will not be a warrior. And I will see to it that in his time as king, he will have no active military enemies anywhere. All those neighboring countries bordering on Israel will be at peace with Israel, either because they love us or because they're terrified of us or we've wiped them out. But he will not have to make war in his time. Ki Shlomo Yeshmo, his name will be Shlomo, from the word Shalom. V'Shalom v'Sheket etenal Yisrael b'yamav. Hu yivnavayit l'shmi, so he will build a house in my name. V'hu yeli leven bani la'av, he'll be my son, I'll be his father. V'hachinoti kiseh malchuto Yisrael olam. Okay. So David tells him, therefore, my son, all you have to do is follow in God's ways. Do the mitzvot, Shabbat, Kashrut, follow the mitzvot of the Torah, and God will give you everything. He'll protect you in every way. You'll be safe. You'll build the Beit HaMikdash, and chazak ve'ematz, be strong and filled with courage and fortitude. There's nothing you'll ever have to fear. Al tiravi al techat. B'nei ba'anyi, and in my modesty, in my humbleness, humility, here's what I've done for you, my dear son. Hachinoti levet Hashem. I have prepared in advance, as I said, like a temple in a box. Just add water and stir. That in the meantime, I've laid aside for the house of the Lord 100,000 talents of gold and 1,000,000 talents of silver and copper and iron, so much we can't even weigh it, and wood and stone. And if you want to add to them, add to them. I think I've got it all covered. And I've got an abundance of workmen lined up at your disposal. Hewers and workers in stone, stonemasons and wood carvers, every kind of craftsman. Gold, silver, copper, iron without limit. So just go and do it. Kum va'aseh. Just do it. And God will be with you. And that was that. So we continue with the commentary. In the Midrash Tehillim, they say that God said that David, lo ata tivneh li bayit, you will not be able to build a house. El Shlomo bin Chayev ne'oto, rather your son Shlomo will build it. Ha'ata tivneh li bayit, she'al shimchani koreoto. Even though you will not build the Beit HaMikdash, I will have the name of the Beit HaMikdash associated with your name. When you come to shul at Shacharit in the morning, for Ashkenazim, Sephardim Shacharit daven in a slightly different order. But Ashkenazim begin with Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. Psalm 30 is the way we begin Shacharit services. A psalm of David, a song for the dedication of the house. The idea that the Hanukkah, you think of Hanukkah, you think of lighting menorah. Hanukkah means dedication. Chanukat Habayit is the dedication of the house. What house? The Beit HaMikdash. Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit, a psalm was written for the occasion and in honor of the dedication of the house. It's like if they it's like the day they built the White House, I guess, or when they rebuilt it after the War of 1812 when the British burned it down. I don't know if you know that, but the White House was burned down. by the British, the way the Beit HaMikdash is burned down by the Romans. The only difference is no American knows that. Every Jew who's clued in knows about the Beit HaMikdash. For the last 2,000 years, we've never forgotten they burnt down the Beit HaMikdash. Nobody knows they burned down the White House. Now imagine the day that they put the White House back together and they had a big ceremony. So they would have had, glory, whatever. I don't know if they had in those days, glory, glory, hallelujah. Maybe that came a little later during the Civil War. And so they didn't have glory, glory, hallelujah yet, but whatever. They didn't have John Philip Sousa yet. But whatever songs they had in those days, Yankee Doodle Dandy, I don't know. Well, at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, this was a melody. Like I began class tonight, the way that the producers and creators of that movie, Legend of Destruction, imagined what might a song of the Levium have sounded like at the Beit HaMikdash. And it starts, Mizmor Shir, Chankat Bayit LeDavid, that the Bayit, the house, is associated with David. So that's what the Midrash is talking about, that even though you will not be able to build the house, God says, I will have it that your name will be associated. However, because you shed a lot of blood, I can't let you build it. Nevertheless, I can have the temple associated directly with your name because you went to so much trouble to help it be built. When David first heard from God that he's not going to be allowed to build the Beit HaMikdash because of his own deeds, not necessarily because of God's plan, but that maybe he would have been allowed, but he killed people. David got scared. Did he lose his Olam Haba? Did he lose a place in the world to come? Or did his place in the world to come get knocked down several tiers, T-I-E-R, because he killed people? He got scared about his eternal soul. Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Eli. So Rabbi Yehuda, the son of the rabbi known as Eli, said, Amar lo Heikuf bet Hei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, God, said to David, Al tira, don't be afraid. Chayecha, kol hadamim sheshafachta ka'ayol utzvi hein lefanai. Oh, for goodness sakes, all the blood that you spilled is like the spilling of a ram's blood or a deer's blood. To offer to me, we don't offer deer in the Beit HaMikdash. We offer ram, but it's like you're going to eat kosher. So the butcher has to let's say, slaughter a deer, and the blood comes from a ram, so it's kosher, whether an offered sacrifice or to eat it kosher. That's okay. That's good blood. You're getting rid of the blood. You're offering the blood the way it should be offered. Shneimar bahen al haaretz tishbechenu kamayim. It's in the Torah, in chapter 12 of Devarim. It's part of God's command, how you'll take it and the blood will be, you pour the blood on the ground like water. That's okay. Amar lefanav. So God said, let's just get this part of the way. Okay. Amar lefanav imkein lama eni bone oto. So David then said to God, if everything is copacetic and there's no problem with the blood that I spilled because it was for a necessary cause, why may I not build the Beit HaMikdash? Amar lo, God said to him, again, Midrash Tehillim, Galui v'yadua lefanai. Oy, David, you don't know this, but I know all that's going to unfold in the future. I'm a God of the past, the present, and the future. I unfortunately know that in the future, Yisrael atidim lachto, that the Jewish nation will sin in some terrible way. V'ani mafig bo chamati, and there will be no choice for me, because the sin will be so grievous that there will be no choice for me but to unleash the worst imaginable punishment. And you and I, 2 weeks ago, studied at the end of the book of Kings, the 55 years of King Manasseh in Yehuda, what he did and what the Jews did. And as a result, God destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. And God is telling David, it's happening a long, long time from now. Not on your watch and not on your son's watch, but there will be such a level of sin that there will be no punishment possible short of the single most intense form of spiritual capital punishment I imaginably can wreak on the Jewish people. And so I'm going to wreak that punishment on the Beit HaMikdash. Ani mafik bo samati, I am going to just all that anger for the 55 years of sin under Manasseh and all that continued under all the subsequent kings except for Yoshia, the one righteous young king that was there for a little while. It's all going to be pent up and then expelled onto the Beit HaMikdash. The Israel Nitzalin, and as horrible as that will be, after all, here we are 2,000 years later, still mourning the Beit HaMikdash. God is saying, as horrible as that will be, the only other comparable punishment I will be able to impose in light of all those sins would be destroying the Jewish people. It's one or the other. There's no other punishment for what's going to unfold. It's beyond your imagination. I'll have only two possible options in order to exact proper justice. And I cannot consider the disappearance of the Jewish people, the Am HaNivchar, my chosen people. So the only other way is to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. You want to know why I'm not going to allow you to build the Beit HaMikdash? Not really because you killed Goliath and Philistines. That blood is like pouring the blood of rams and deer on the ground like water. Rather, im ata boneh oto, if you, David, are the one who builds the Beit HaMikdash, harei hu kayam, it shall be eternal. Ve'eno chorev liolam, and it shall not be destroyed, even if the Jews are taken out. If you build it, that temple will last forever. I have a choice, either to take it out on the Jews or on the temple. We're all going to be much better off if I take it out on the Jews, if I take it out, God forbid, if I take it out on the temple, but I can only do that if you're not the one who builds it. Amar lo v'harei hu yafeh. David says, but for goodness sakes, this temple, the Beit HaMikdash, let me build it. Amar lo mutav she'afik bo chamati. God said, better I should take out my wrath on that temple, umechayavo, and make it punished. And for all the sins of the Jews, the nitzolim, but that the Jews survive. And that's why David could not build the Beit HaMikdash. So we have here learned the text again of how David prepared the Beit HaMikdash. And we come to this Malbim. So God says, therefore, to Natan, he was saying, go and tell David he's not going to build the Beit HaMikdash. But tell David that I will be with him. Pretty much, he will be the leader of the Jewish people. So we have a thing. You're going to be the leader of the Jewish people. You'll be a Nagid. What is a Nagid? A Nagid is a leader, a head of government. Malbim explains, why doesn't he say, Lehiyot melech alami Yisrael? You will be a king on Israel, which elsewhere it says he'll be the king. But why does God ever switch from referring to David, go and tell him, Ani lekachticha min hanaveh, I took you out from a sheep's pasture, where you were a shepherd me'achar tzon, where you were a shepherd of sheep. Liyot nagid alam Yisrael. When I say liyot melech al Yisrael, ata et aleph and an ayin. You now, rak nagid aleim, are only a leader. You are a king, and yet you're kind of like not a king. V'lo kiblucha al ofen shetimloch malchut kayemet ledor dorim. You are not yet established as having been accepted by the nation to be the progenitor of a dynasty. Like Saul was the king, and not only because I, God, sent Shmuel to anoint you, to make you the new king, and handed the kingship over to you from the house of Saul and punished Saul, but we see the people came to accept that you are the new king. And Ishbosheth, once he was assassinated, the nation came and there was no crying out for, let's find a relative of Saul, a distant relative of Saul. That is, Saul did not end up with a dynasty. Potentially he had one, he had Jonathan and other sons, but in the end he did not. And the people did not, they were not the ones who crowned him to be dynastic. Therefore you, sha'ad ata lo iftach, until now, until Shlomo, it cannot yet be said that your kingship was dynastic, that there was a dynasty of the house of David for all time. Continuing with the next Malbim. So Malbim, interesting on this pasuk 12. Let's look at it. And this is sort of wrapping up the text we all have learned together through most of chapter 7 as we move over to chapter 8. So God kind of wrapped it up with these words. David, all will be well. Your son will build a house. Your son will be blessed. I'll be his father. He'll be my son, etc., etc. Ki yimla'u yamecha. And your days of life will be completed. How many are completed life? So interesting. It's felt that 70 years, 70. Look, it's not that people are entitled. No one is entitled to anything when it comes to life. It's all in God's hands. But if someone lived 70, people could say he lived a full life. And if he lived 80, noch besser, even better. 90, noch besser. But if you made it to 70, like if you didn't make it, not you, if a person did not make it to 70, so there'd be more of a sense of person didn't make it the whole, then it's a shame. It's always a shame. I'm trying to find, the wording I'm looking for, that the feeling that the person died young, and because they didn't reach 70. Once they reach 70, there's supposed to be more of a sense of still complete tragedy. And think of all the addition he could have done, or she could have done. But at least 70 is sort of, in Judaism, even then, kind of even now, yes, there's a longer longevity. But really, even now, a lot more people make it to 80. But again, there's a feeling that if someone does not make it to 70, you know where I'm going with this. Obviously, it's very hard for me because Ellen Zichron Livracha died at 64, and it's just palpable. You don't need a midrash to know that so young. And for me, it was like when at 68 they put me in for the lung transplant. My mindset was, I'd like to live to 120 so I can make more trouble. The longer I live, the more trouble I can make. But at least, I remember psychologically, at least, please God, get me to 70. Let's see where it goes from there. So thank God. Thank God. So he says, Yimlu'u yamecha, your days are complete. Malay means full or complete. So in concluding the prophecy to David, your days will be complete, meaning you'll have at least 70. V'shachavta et avotecha, and then you will be laid to rest with your family. with your family, your parents. V'hakimoti et zaracha acharecha, and I shall uphold, meaning I shall bring another zara, more seed, at least one more child after you. Asher yetzei mime'echa, and that child will come from your own loins. You won't be the stepfather. You will have your own, you will be fathering at least one more child who will be coming after you. You'll be buried among your family. You'll have a full life. V'hachinoti et mamlachto, and I shall establish and uphold that boy's throne. So Malbim, very interesting Malbim, he sees 5 prophecies in what I just read. Achar shehodio me'inyan hamnucha, after God assured David that there will ultimately be peace, his son will have peace, will build the Beit HaMikdash, he will have peace. B'sarehu me'inyan hamalchut shehiya lo olamit. God then passed along to him the news, the good tidings, that his king, his throne, his dynasty shall be eternal forever. She'al zeh amar, because look what he said, ki bayit yaselach Hashem, ube'er lo bazeh shiva dvarim, that God said, bayit ya'asel lecha Hashem, God will make for you a house, for you, not that you're gonna make me a house, I'm gonna make you a house also. And here are the prophecies. First, ki yimlu'u yamecha, sheyimlu'u yamav ad shivim shana, a prophecy that he will live at least 70 years, 70. Sheyishkav avotav, he will be laid to rest with his parents, with his family, his ancestors. V'lo yehareg b'milchama, meaning he will not die in war. He will not die in battle. King Saul died in battle. Ishbosheth was assassinated in his bedroom. David will die in peace. Sheyishkav v'mavotav, he will lie with his fathers. Third, v'hakimoti zaracha acharecha, I shall bring up a son after you. V'lo sheyimloch b'no alav, the hidden prophecy in that, I will bring a son after you, and he will not try to overthrow you. We are tragically going to learn about one of David's prior sons, already growing up, Absalom, who indeed will rebel against David, actually try to kill him. It's going to be a horrible story. And here God is saying, you will also have a son coming, and I guarantee he'll become king, but not by overthrowing you. Lo sheyimloch alav b'chayav, kama said Avshalom. Dalet, fourth prophecy, asher yetzei mimeacha, and this son about whom I'm talking will yet come. Hodio shehaben ha'atid limloch lo nolad adayin. God is promising and informing him that the son about whom I'm speaking, will build the Beit HaMikdash, etc., has not yet been born. Hinei ben nolad lach, a son will be born to you. And 5, v'hachinoti et mamlachto, I shall establish his throne. Shetechep b'mlacho, yachin malchuto biyado. Immediately, upon his ascending to the throne, he immediately will become king and will not have any rebels to put down, any opposition to put down, and will rapidly be warmly accepted in the nation as their king. Bechol oz, with all strength. And so, as we start winding down, we still have a few moments. Let's get into chapter 8. And let's understand the background of chapter 8 before we get into the text. The background is this. You know how we've been learning how David did everything possible in order to make it so that Shlomo could have his kingdom and he could have his Beit HaMikdash to build, so there'd be like nothing left but to do it. So David asked himself, I think I got everything done now. I got the gold, the silver, the copper, the brass. I got the workers, I got the stone cutters, I got the carvers, I got this, I got that, I think everything's done. Is there anything else I can do? There's one thing left. I have to wipe out all the nations all around us, or I have to bring them down so terribly that when Shlomo takes over, they either aren't there or they don't pose any threat at all. I've got to essentially set them back. In 1948, Israel was founded and had 7 Arab countries attack it. In 1956, Egypt came back for another round. In 1967, 11 years later, Nasser of Egypt, Syria, Jordan, they made another war every 11 years. In 1967, Israel fought that war in a mighty way that crushed Jordan. Jordan, since 1967, never again made another war with Israel. That's 56 years, 57 years. Syria, one more time, 1973 Yom Kippur War. When Israel was done, it was a bad start, and it was terrifying what might have happened. But by the time the Yom Kippur War was ended, Syria, since 1973, they threatened, they built up their, since 1973, for 51 years, Syria has not made another war with Israel. And after 1977, Egypt has not made another war with Israel. So now they've all set up proxies. Jordan's got the so-called Palestine Authority. There's no such thing as Palestine, Judea and Samaria. And Syria and Lebanon, they have Hezbollah, and Egypt set up, let's say, Gaza with Hamas. And so they all have a bunch of suckers. You go get killed. You go and destroy Israel with our blessings. You're not going to succeed, but you will kill Jews, which we're happy with. And you go ahead and get blown to pieces. But Egypt, why don't you do it? You're bigger, you have a stronger army. Syria or Jordan, we're not in the mood. Maybe tomorrow. Busy. There's a big baseball game tonight. So what ends up happening is David HaMelech basically decides that's the one thing remaining. I'm going to wipe out all the neighboring nations that pose a threat. If a country nearby is nice, like Phoenicia, King Hiram of Lebanon, Phoenicia, okay, great. I don't have to make war with him. But for all the others that are making trouble, that's my next step. I'm going to wipe them all out. What about the innocent civilians? There are no innocent civilians in these places. There are no innocent civilians in these places. What did Biden say last night? That the demonstrators calling for the death of Israel, that they have a point? All right, chapter 8. So right after that, David went to war with the Philistines, and he brought them down. He humbled them. And he took a place called Metakama. Okay, so here's the interesting thing here. This is the Malbim. Hodio Hashem al Yedei Hanavi, Kilohu Yivna Habayit. So God had informed him, as we've learned a lot of times, through the Navi, the prophet, that he's not going to build a house. Ba'asher od lo nichretu oivav. And one of the reasons he's not going to build a house is that all the enemy nations around Israel, surrounding Israel, still have been wiped out, have not been wiped out. Ra'ah ki ratzon Hashem shelo yanuach hadayin mimilchama. And he saw that God would like them wiped out. Lachen yatzal levakeshet oivav u'tager bam milchama bi'artzam. And therefore, he went out and made war against every one of the enemy-threatening nations. And this is something different from anything. It probably did not catch your attention till now. It is the first time we see Israel going to war in their cities. It's always they attacking Israel. Israel playing defense under King Saul, early King David, getting attacked by Moab, by this country, Ammon, Edom, Philistines, Plishtim, and then Israel fighting them off and driving them back. I hate to say it, but that's what is that stuff about prologue to the present and everything. That's what we've had with Hamas for the last 15 years. Israel's trying to live in peace. Hamas starts a war. They shoot rockets and they shoot this and they kill people and start building tunnels and they start doing what they can to kill people. Israel responds, hits back, knocks out the rocket launchers, knocks out a few bases, and then there's a ceasefire. And then all over again. Hamas, 5 years later, Israel fights back. A lot of Jews get killed, more Gazans, and then there's a ceasefire. And this went on 5 times, 5 wars. Always Gaza, Hamas, attacking Israel, or Hezbollah attacking Israel. And then Israel responds by bombing them where they're shooting from, but no invasions. That's what makes this one different. And the whole world doesn't like it. And to heck with the whole world. And Netanyahu's a war criminal. To heck with the whole world. And Biden and all of them, to heck with them. He's doing what he has to do, and that's what God had David Melech do. And that's proper. You cannot have peace if you only defend. I don't know what sport you like. Other than American football, you can never win a game if you only play defense. In baseball, if you're only out in the field playing defense with a strong pitcher, the best you can hope for is 0-0 after 1,000,000 innings. Hockey, if all you play is defense with the best goalie, all you can hope for is 0-0. Basketball, 0-0. Tennis, you name it. Soccer, lacrosse, the only sport, because of the quirkiness of one little element of NFL football, is technically, though it never happens, maybe once in 30 years, a team with a weak offense, I guess if they recover a quarterback's fumble in the end zone, so then they get 2 points safety. Or if they recover a fumble in the end zone, they get 6 points. Or if they do a pick six and intercept a pass. And you can't bring a war to an end if you don't go on offense. And that's what David understood. All the time we've been learning Navi, all the wars, Shaul, and it's always taking place in the land of Israel. In Israel, not in the Philistine Gaza. David decides, this time, on behalf of my son, and to bring true peace, I'm going into Gaza. And I'm going to finish them off in Gaza. It's the only way this is going to work. So he says, Ra'ah, ki ratzon Hashem shelo yanuach adayin b'milchama, lachen yotza levakesh revav l'tager bam milchama be'artzam. Therefore, David this time made a war in their land. V'tachat she'arata ba'u plishtim el artso v'lo hichniam. And inasmuch as until now it's always been the Philistines attacking the Jews in Jewish land, and we never humble them. We never bring it to an end. Ata with an ayin halach el artzam v'ichniem. Therefore, this time he went into their land, like what Israel's doing in Gaza, because it's the only way to bring it, if at all, to an end, or at least to buy a good 20, 40 years of peace. V'gam lakach chevel me'artzam metakama, and he took some of their land. He, quote unquote, occupied their land and annexed it. And it goes on about that. I've got just a little bit more time, just an itsy bitsy. So Rashi, so we go to the next verse. It says, that's Plishtim. Now he attacks Moab. You know what? This is going to bring me to 4 different citations. So we'll get to that next week, because I've got like all 4 or 5 of these build off this Rashi. So perfect time to let it go. So we're at chapter 8, verse 2. He's now on the warpath. He's, by the way, according to the Midrash, that says that the reason he cannot build the Beit HaMikdash is because he's so righteous that God never would destroy it. And not because he killed blood that had to be killed. So he doesn't have that as a deterrent. And frankly, according to the other opinion, that the reason he cannot build the Beit HaMikdash is all these people that he killed, albeit righteously and properly. Well, now that that's decided, and he can't build the Beit HaMikdash anyway, may as well finish the job. And so he's now on the warpath. He's just pretty much exterminated the Philistines, but he has wiped them out now such that they're not going to be a problem. And he's going to go after Moab, and he's going to go after some of these others. And Shlomo will inherit an amazing throne, wealth, complete peace, no fear, a strong ally in Phoenicia, King Hiram, a Beit HaMikdash about to be built. It's going to be like in many ways, the single best time in Jewish history. If Ma'amad Har Sinai, standing on Mount Sinai, was the spiritual highlight of the Jewish nation for all time to come, the years that King Solomon, his early years of his kingship, are regarded by most as the best time in all Jewish history, in terms of simply the best of times. So that's it for today. And before I break, are there any questions or any, let's see, just a quick, 78 versus, well, if a person doesn't make it to 70, it's not that they were cheated, because we can't know God's ways. But it certainly gives more reason to cry. If someone, Ellen Zichrona Livracha, her father died at 99, just a few days before being 100, about a year ago. He was born the same day as Betty White. That was his claim to fame in Binghamton, New York. I was born the same day as Betty White. And God, they died the same day. Now that's really something. When he died, I cried. He was a very special man. If I start talking about it too much more, I'll cry again. But I knew he had lived a full life. When someone doesn't make it to 70, it's not so much they were cheated. God has his reasons, but it means that it's not wrong to feel the person did not get to reach what one might have expected to be the finish line. And finally, yeah, okay, that's another story for another time. Thank you very much for being here. God willing, we will not meet Thursday night. An email goes out for that. In committee, a month ago, July 18, we did not meet the last night of the Republican convention to hear their presidential candidate deliver his speech. And it's only proper and fitting that we will not meet this Thursday night because the candidate of the Democrats will be delivering her speech, unless they change the candidate again. And it's only appropriate we should not meet on Thursday night. And then we will be back on a regular schedule starting Sunday. Be well, and I guess therefore Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.